Okay, so let's start with a really big question. What is education actually for? I mean, it seems simple, right? But believe it or not, a group of top minds, including a Nobel laureate, recently got together at a Nobel Prize dialogue just to debate that very thing. And what they talked about, well, it reveals a whole lot about where we are and maybe where we ought to be going.
And look, the answer to this question isn't just some academic exercise. It literally defines how we shape entire generations. It's not just about getting a job, right? It's about what kind of people we want to become. Now, before we hear from the experts, the audience was asked this exact same question. Let's see what they had to say.
The answers from the crowd were, well, they were pretty incredible. People see education as a way to become a better person, to find out what you're good at, to move society forward, and even to fight inequality. These are the big, powerful ideals we all really hope for. So, how did the expert panel see it?
Well, the panelists basically took all these hopes and dreams and boiled them down to three core ideals. And they don't really conflict with each other. They're more like three different pillars holding up the whole idea of what education should be. Let's dig into the first one, which is all about looking inward. So first up is this idea of self-knowledge. Director Jules Razak made a great point that, ever since the ancient Greeks, the goal has been to know thyself. Before we can learn a single thing about the world, we have to understand ourselves, our shared humanity, empathy, and what actually connects us all. The second big ideal? It's all about the mind. Nobel laureate Kosta Novoselov puts it so simply. Education's main job is to plant the seeds of critical thinking. It's about learning how to reason, how to question things, and how to analyze the world around us, to move beyond just gut instinct. He thinks that's what truly makes us human.
And the third ideal, this one is all about our character, our spirit. Teacher Anong Choi argues that education absolutely has to build resilience and confidence. And how do you do that? By creating a space where it's okay to fail, because it's by picking yourself up from those little failures that you build the real strength to keep going. So you've got the heart, the mind, and the spirit. Three amazing ideals. But there's a huge problem. As inspiring as all that sounds, the whole panel pretty much agreed there's this massive gap between what we say education is for and what it actually does in the real world. And this is where the conversation got really, really interesting and honestly, a little uncomfortable. Professor Lynn Goodwin just laid it out there with this powerful critique. The big promise of education is that it gives everyone a fair shot, right? It's supposed to level the playing field. But in reality, she argues, it's often become the exact opposite, a system that actually makes inequality even worse. So, instead of being this great equalizer, our modern school system often works more like a giant sorting machine. It ranks and labels students, separating them into piles of who's deserving of opportunity and who isn't. The result? More division, not less. So how on earth did we get here? Well, Joel Razak points a finger way back at the Industrial Revolution. He argues that schools were basically redesigned to act like factories. The goal wasn't to create well-rounded people, it was to produce workers for the economy. Students became products on an assembly line, standardized and prepped for the job market. And we lost that focus on nurturing unique human beings. Okay, so if the factory model is broken, what's the alternative? The good news is the panel didn't just point out the problem. They offered some really exciting new ways to think about learning itself, moving away from that industrial assembly line and towards something much more human. One of the most powerful ideas was also one of the simplest. We just have to give students time to bloom. I mean, learning isn't a race. Professor Goodwin pointed out that some people learn really fast, while for others, it's more of a slow burn. Our brains are developing our whole lives,
So a rigid, one-size-fits-all timeline is just bound to fail a lot of students.
So, how do you help students find what they love in a system that isn't a race? Teacher Anong Choi proposed this fantastic model she calls the snorkeling approach. The idea is pretty simple. Just picture all of human knowledge as this giant ocean. There's no way you could ever explore all of it.
The whole process works in 3 steps. First, students just scan the surface, getting a little taste of a bunch of different subjects. Then, and this is key, they get the freedom to pick an area that actually fascinates them. And finally, they're encouraged to take a deep dive, to just totally immerse themselves. This isn't about forcing kids to learn. It's about sparking a real, genuine passion. This new way of thinking about the classroom is just one piece of the puzzle. The panel argued for a much more fundamental rebalancing, one that prepares students not just for a job, but, for life.
Here it is. This is the core tension. For way too long, education has been almost completely focused on preparing us for a livelihood, getting the skills we need for a job, for economic success, but it's totally neglected preparing us for life, how to manage our emotions, how to be resilient, how to find happiness. We desperately need a balance of both.
Jewel Razik put it really bluntly. He warned that if we don't start integrating these life skills, our coping mechanisms, our mental well-being, we are setting the next generation up for a massive crisis. This isn't some soft skill or an afterthought. It's absolutely essential.
So, what's the ultimate goal of a truly great education? What does it produce? Well, according to Nobel laureate Kostanova Solov, the single most important thing he looks for when he's hiring young scientists isn't their grades. It isn't even their knowledge. It's their self-motivation. That internal fire, sparked by genuine curiosity, that is the true gift that education can give. And that brings us right back to our central question. If we completely reject this idea of school as a factory that just churns out workers, then we're left with a huge challenge, but also a really beautiful opportunity. What are we trying to build instead? Maybe it's not a product at all. Maybe it's a person, resilient, curious, and fully complexly human.